Once traveling through the world of Confucianism and Taoism, one can easily encounter a second generation of playboys. Isn't it, sir? This is already a world of high martial arts. Do you still follow this kind of plot? Spelling poetry and transforming it into imagery, it once appeared in the Qian Wen Bao. Hold your golden finger and enjoy 1.1 tutoring from a renowned teacher in your dreams. At this point, a new generation of rolling kings was born. During the day, study hard. At night, dreaming. Work overtime to study. As long as you can't learn to death, learn to death. After many years, the consensus among the saints was once again initiated. It is rumored that the new sage has a strange book that can summon heroes from other worlds. In her book, there is the Qinglian poet immortally Tai Bai. With a single sentence. To carry oneself in a white blade, to kill in the mortal world, one can come and go without a trace, transforming into a peerless assassin. It is rumored that in her book, there is a timeless emperor. The first emperor. A great wall spanning thousands of miles, an ancient ancestral dragon, located on the border, isolates demons and barbarians, and protects millions of people. When she ascended the high platform, everyone was watching her from all directions. Sentient beings. Your mother. Isn't this the little apprentice in my dream? When did it become holy? Old rules, still no CP, keywords of the novel. The female protagonist engages in inner turmoil and self-rescue in a different world, becoming a big shot without a pop-up window. The female protagonist engages in inner turmoil and self-rescue in a different world, becoming a big shot. Download the complete text. The female protagonist engages in inner turmoil and self-rescue in a different world, becoming a big shot. Latest chapter for reading. Chapter 1. Willing to be cut all over, dare to pull the participating generals off their horses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Willing to be cut all over, dare to pull the participating generals off their horses. Shuo Bay Border Fortress. Dingyuan City. The north wind howled past, carrying a few snowflakes along the way. In front of a mansion, a young girl closed her eyes and passed out, with a pale face, lying on the ground. Observing the crowd, it was a magnificent scene. From time to time, low voices of discussion rang out. Mr. Song's life and death are uncertain outside, and I'm afraid he never expected that after he left, his only daughter would be humiliated like this. Someone gritted their teeth and said, the son of the leader of the ginseng is a bit arrogant. He's actually bullying a little orphan girl. An old man next to him sighed and said, if it weren't for the absence of the Ming king, how would they dare to be so arrogant? You know, according to the Qian law, bullying military descendants is a crime of exile for thousands of miles. While the people around were wary of the son of the leader and whispering, no one saw the green-clad girl lying on the ground with her eyelashes trembling slightly. Pain it hurt so much. Song Lanyi listened to a slight murmur in her ear, combined with memories in her mind, and in an instant, it seemed like thunder was exploding in her ear. She has traveled. In her previous life, while conducting archaeological work, she stumbled and fell into a pit. In the blink of an eye, she was reborn onto a young girl. This is a world where immortals and martial arts coexist. In the northern frontier of Shuo, there is a peaceful army whose purpose is to resist the demons and barbarians in the north. Now, as a member of the Border Defense Army, the life and death of her father are uncertain. As an orphan girl, Song Lanyi can only let the son of this general knead and flatten her. The most despicable thing is that the son of this general, who is already over 20 years old, even boasted shamelessly and wanted to marry Song Lanyi, who is still a cardamom, as his seventh concubine. Song Lanyi slowly opened her eyes and, under the surprised gaze of those around her, stood up in front of the son of the general. Zhong Rui, the son of the general, frowned and said, Song Lanyi, come with me when you think about it. You are just an orphan girl from a military household, and I admire you. That's your blessing. This is a safe PUA. Song Lanyi couldn't help but choke and said, this blessing is for you. Do you want it? Zhong Rui, as the son of a general, has decent facial features. He is just a bloated and blue person all year round, looking like an indulgent person, without the heroic spirit of a general. Unfortunately, he feels excessively good about himself. Zhong Rui's face darkened when he saw Song Lanyi unwilling. He waved his hand at the servant next to him and said coldly, tie her up. Even if it's tied up today, the young master will tie her back to the Zhong mansion. Song Lanyi's smile disappeared as she took a step forward and said, if you dare to do this, I dare to bump into the general's mansion and die. Zhong Rui was furious and said, how dare you? Willing to be cut all over, dare to pull off the general's horses. You say, do I dare? Zhong Rui, can you afford to gamble? As soon as the words fell, the wind and snow suddenly stopped in front of the door, causing a sudden change. At that moment, a sound echoed in everyone's ears. This voice was exactly the line from Song Lanyi's mouth, I am willing to cut myself and dare to pull the generals off their horses. I saw the sound of horses hissing in mid-air. In a phantom, a red rabbit and a galloping horse appeared, with a person wearing a purple golden crown and a spear pointing at the general's mansion. I could only hear the sound of a plaque crashing to the ground and shattering. The man with a long spear and armor turned coldly and swept his spear horizontally, the last general is here. Where are the participating generals? The painting gradually faded away, and there was silence all around. Zhong Rui's face was unable to see the extreme. In an instant, there were faint voices of discussion. Out of the county. This is actually a poem from Out of the County. Mr. Song often said that Qian Jin has always been fond of reading poetry and books, but I never expected to be true. Poetry is divided into counties, Dafu, Mingzhou, Zhenghua, and Xuantianxia. Now, half a sentence of poetry has been completed, transforming into a fantasy, which is called poetry from counties. Alas, this daughter of the Song family is a great talent, it's a pity. Zhong Rui listened to the voices of discussion in his ear, and his gaze towards Song Lanyi became increasingly condensed. His gaze was affectionate, his mouth curled, and he sneered, do you think that with just a line of poetry from the county, you can drink me away? In this northern part of Shua, there is nothing that I, Zhong Rui, cannot do. Oh! Lord Zhong has such great courage. It is said that there is no royal land in the world, but I don't know when this northern region was named Zhong. I'm afraid in a few days, this great Qian dynasty will be named Zhong. Upon hearing these words, Zhong Rui's heart almost stopped beating. But on the surface, he still maintained his aloof demeanor and said, bold. How can you speak recklessly about politics with your bare body? Song Lanyi looked at him, her fair chin raised, and she took a sudden step forward. In the past, Meng Sheng had a saying, the people are precious and the ruler is light. Although I am a white body, I am like an ant. However, as long as I am a descendant of the great Qian dynasty, I can talk about court politics in one day. You Zhong Reich, I Song Lanyi Ku, these countless people under heaven can do it. Furthermore, Song Lanyi's eyes were red, and there was a chilling madness and disregard for everything in her words. Do you really think, Zhong Rui, that I just said something? You can give it a try. If Zhong Mansion wants to take a concubine today, I, Song Lanyi, will crash into the stone lion at your doorstep. I'd like to see if only the stone lions at the gate of the general's house are clean. 1,000 years later, Song Lanyi may still have a good reputation and spread around the world. What's more, a chaste memorial archway can be built. What about you Zhong Rui? Song Lanyi sneered, I'm afraid that when the huge Zhong mansion is brought up again in the future, people will only say, my descendants are not worthy, they have given birth to such a thing. Zhong Rui couldn't help but tremble all over at this moment. Half of them are angry, and the other half are afraid. If the Zhong family really gets stigmatized because of this, not to mention him, even his father will be implicated in the official reputation. He took a deep breath and looked at Song Lanyi with a sinister gaze. There are still 15 days left. After 15 days, the Pinyin army will return to the city. You better hope that your father is still alive. Otherwise, once Song Lanyi loses his father's support, it's not enough for him to be squeezed flat and round. Even if she is sharp-tongued and sharp, in the face of real power. It's just that. Song Lanyi also knew this and agreed to this delaying strategy. After Zhong Rui got into the carriage and left completely, she finally relaxed all over. But soon, her eyebrows furrowed again. 15 days. What should I do if my original father doesn't return after 15 days? After a moment, Song Lanyi sat in the study, watching the wind and snow floating outside the window, her eyebrows always fixed together. The conversation of the servants in the corridor was faintly heard through the north wind. Miss has always been proficient in poetry and literature, and today she has even created poems and verses for leaving the county. I only hate that Miss is not a man and cannot participate in the scientific examination. Otherwise, how could that Zhong Rui be so arrogant? Books. Poetry books. Song Lanyi's mind flashed with a bright light. Books represent knowledge. In this world where poetry, books, rituals, and righteousness can all be used as weapons, truly achieving knowledge is power. Moreover, Song Lanyi was originally born in an archaeological class. She naturally has more patience, attention to detail, and even curiosity than others. She was curious about what was different about this sage's peaceful world. She looked at the medicine classic spread out on the table, her eyes bursting with an intimidating brilliance. Learn. Learn to death. I have opened a new book, which is different from the first one that was just a little naive. This book has added a lot of anxiety. The inspiration for this book comes from the sage of Confucianism and Taoism, which is also the true pioneering work of Confucianism and Taoism. Compared to the previous book, this book may have a smaller audience. I will work hard to adjust my state and submit a satisfactory answer sheet. When I was in the book opening stage, my biggest fear was having a little cutie compare this book with the previous one. I started writing this book much slower, and I hope everyone can be gentle. Kneel down and thank you all. New book, let's set sail again. The world of this book is vast. Please follow my footsteps and take a look at a different world once again. P.S. Out of county, De Fu, Mingzhou, Zhenghua, and Chuan Tian Xiao. This setting comes from the sage of Confucianism and Taoism, because it's too difficult to think of a name. But many subsequent settings are different, it's still a brand new story. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Dreaming of the Medicine Saint. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Dreaming of the Medicine Saint. Relying on the memory of the original owner, one can completely become the lowest-ranking 9th-grade medicine disciple. As long as there is a medicinal disciple who is recognized by the heavenly way and has been filled with talent, Song Lanyi immediately packed his bags and defected to the Ming King's banner. Grandma, even if you become a military doctor, it's better than marrying that cowardly little girl like Zhong Rui as a concubine. With this thought in mind, Song Lanyi simply showed her determination to burn the midnight oil and steal light by chiseling walls. But as time passed, her eyelids inevitably sank. Immediately after, she paused and leaned directly against the desk. At this moment, the night had already faded, and a hint of fish belly white appeared on the horizon. The maid under the corridor saw this and quietly entered, taking a suitable thick and thin blanket and draped it over Song Lan's shoulder. At this moment, Song Lanyi felt as if she had come to another world. Above this space, there is a line of couplets. The mountain of books has a path, and diligence leads to success. The sea of learning is endless, and hard work makes a boat. Song Lanyi had a vague guess in her heart. Is this a golden finger? Does it seem to be helpful for learning? She was about to take a step when suddenly 5 colorful cards appeared in front of her. The pattern on this card is carved out of the same mold, and there is no discernible difference. Song Lanyi felt a stronger sense of strangeness in her heart. Isn't this from a past life? Drawing cards. I saw her slowly extending her green fingers, gently reaching out and touching a card. Southern border. The most abundant area in the southern region is the colorful forest of miasma. In addition to miasma, there are also different colored bacteria, 5-legged snakes, and even some barbarians. It can be said that the southern region is basically a barren land that makes people turn pale upon hearing it. However, in this barren land, an old man with a bamboo hat walked leisurely among them. Wherever he passes, poisonous insects and snakes retreat like encountering natural enemies. When he lightly tapped on a herb, he saw it grow in the wind, and in a few breaths, it reached maturity. When he walked out of the woods, the medicine bag behind him was already bulging. Master Yao. A young man outside the forest immediately lowered his head respectfully when he saw the old man. The old man nodded slightly, and upon seeing the young man's appearance, a hint of a smile appeared on his face. Wu Man, it seems that your injury has healed a lot. The old man has a kind face and approachable words. But Wu Man dared not treat him casually at all. Because he knows very well in his heart. The old man in front of me is the renowned medicine saint of the great Qian dynasty. It is rumored that his medical realm has reached a state of transcendence. With just one finger, one can live to death and have white bones. In Kyoto, countless nobles and powerful officials, holding countless heavenly and earthly treasures, are only seeking medical treatment from the medicine saint. Even during the lifetime of the late emperor, he issued edicts to search for the medicine saint and even his disciples, in order to visit the thatched cottage 3 times and invite them out of the mountains. The ultimate result was, the medicine saint couldn't bear the disturbance and ran to the poisonous miasma forest in the south. After talking to the medicine saint for a few words, Wu Man suddenly noticed a drowsiness on his face and quickly stepped down, no longer bothering him. Drowsiness. A strange expression appeared on the face of the medicine saint. He has already reached the realm of a saint, where else does he need to fall asleep? He squinted his eyes slightly, feeling a sense of vigilance in his heart. Anyway, whether it's humans or demons, let me test it. After thinking about it, the medicine saint leaned on the large blue stone used to make medicinal herbs, closed his eyes, and fell asleep. In his dream, the medicine saint opened his eyes and saw a vast space. The space was lifelike, and for a moment, it made it difficult for him to distinguish whether it was in his dream or in reality. But the next second, the mutation suddenly appeared. A heavenly light suddenly wrapped around the body of the medicine saint, but in a moment, the medicine saint had no choice but to sign the contract. Medicine saint. He looked at those treaties, such as, not revealing the existence of space to outsiders, not showing malice to the space owner, must teach seriously while on duty, the final interpretation right belongs to the space, what kind of ghosts are these? The medicine saint was simply laughed at in anger. The emperor dared not force him to accept his apprenticeship, but unexpectedly, he fell into an inexplicable space today. He wanted to see what kind of divinity this was. How could he summon the power of the heavenly way to kidnap a saint to give a lecture? With such an inexplicable mood, the medicine saint slowly pushed open the only door in the space Jia. The sound of the door being pushed rang out. The picture suddenly changed. In a rudimentary bookshelf, a young girl in her prime was passionately reciting a copy of the medicine classic. The medicine saint looked at the serious appearance of the young girl, and for some reason, a lot of displeasure in his heart dissipated. Seeing the young girl, he felt as if he had returned to the beginning of learning medicine. Under the supervision of his master, he sat on a small stool, shaking his head while reciting the medicine classic. Just he still had to say, "This bookstore is really shabby." As soon as the words fell, the sound of reading in the room stopped. The girl was dressed in green clothes, with her hair slightly curled up and her big black eyes wide open. She was pleasantly surprised and said, "Are you the gentleman in the space?" At this time, Song Lanyi did not know that this medicine saint was a real person. The medicine saint frowned and was about to say that he had been kidnapped, but on second thought, he didn't want to reveal his identity so quickly. He pondered for a moment and said, "Old man. Famous medicine is useless." This is a common name that he has almost forgotten himself. Song Lanyi thought it was a phantom and bowed to his teacher, "Student Song Lanyi, I have seen Mr. Yao." Seeing her strict and orderly behavior, Yao Wuji's displeasure dissipated further. He had a milder attitude and walked into the study, looking at the medicine classic. He casually said, "As a woman, how could you think of studying the medicine classic?" Song Lanyi did not say anything grandiose, but spoke confidently. "I want to gain strength. Men can try, be talented, win fame and fortune, and even gain supreme power. Although I am a woman, I long for strength. In this way, I don't have to be easily controlled by others. I also want to see a wider world and endless knowledge." Yao Wuji could see that when Song Lanyi said these words, his words were sincere, and there were occasional genuine expressions of emotion. It was undoubtedly true. This answer is not perfect, but what medicine doesn't help is this kind of imperfection. He travels all over the world and has seen too many people. There are many who exaggerate, but very few who reveal their true feelings. He could see that the words spoken by Song Lanyi were sincere. With a single thought, a copy of the medicine classic appeared in my hand. Song Lanyi widened her eyes and said, "Sir, are you going to teach me medicine? Medical treatment?" Yao Wuji sneered as if he had thought of something. If there is only one bodhisattva's heart, how should one day encounter a villain and accidentally cure him, only to be dealt with upside down? My way is the way of medicine. The way of medicine is ever changing, it can save people or kill people. Song Lanyi's heart was cold and somewhat eager. Next, she listened more attentively. When it comes to medicinal properties, there is a feeling of lightness and ease when explaining the importance of medicine. After discussing the properties of the medicine, he took this opportunity to delve deeper and explain the prescription. According to him, every disciple of the medicine sect starts with pharmaceuticals. For a moment, Song Lanyi was mesmerized by the sound. Today is over, and the new book has a daily publication of 4,000. One watch, 2,000 words. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Shengji Wan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Shengji Wan. Until faint sounds from the outside came from within the space. It's already 3 strokes of the sun, miss. It's time to wake up. Song Lanyi rubbed her head and opened her eyes somewhat drowsily. The maid Shueyue on the side couldn't help but cover her mouth and smile when she saw this scene. "Miss, do you think this medicine classic is boring?" "Looking at it, I don't know when I fell asleep." Song Lanyi was taken aback for a moment and quickly opened the medicinal scripture at hand, only to see dense annotations on it. So, is the dream real? Song Lanyi looked at the hemostatic powder and muscle-activating pills annotated next to the medicinal scriptures, her heart beating faster and faster. If Mr. Yao is not mistaken, these are exclusive prescriptions of the disciples of the medicine sect. She reached out and beckoned Shueyue, "Shueyue, please ask the doorman to go to the pharmacy. Remember, you need 6 taels of silver and soil, 3 taels of danshan, and 8 coins of osmanthus flowers." Shueyue saw Song Lanyi's serious face and couldn't help but lift her heart, taking note of each of these medicinal herbs one by one. Among these medicinal herbs, Song Lanyi also added several useless ones. To disturb others' sight. Time flies by in a hurry. These days, Song Lanyi has nothing to do but lie on the couch and take a nap. The maid in the room only thought that the girl was taking a nap in Maodong. "Even worse, it's because of worry that I can't sleep well at night," so I can only take a nap during the day. But only Song Lanyi knew that she was doing this, firstly to avoid Zhong Rui, and secondly to take the opportunity to learn more pharmacological knowledge. In these days, she not only masters the production of hemostatic powder, but also can refine birth muscle pills. Outside the window, heavy snow was falling, and the sound of the north wind blowing from outside the Great Wall could still be vaguely heard. The sky in the north always gets darker faster. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the corridor, disrupting Song Lanyi's thinking. She frowned and shouted down the corridor, "Why are you so frightened?" There was a moment of silence below the corridor. Immediately after, there was another crackling noise. I saw Shueiyue with a sorrowful expression. "Miss, it's not good. But has my father returned?" Song Lanyi's heart trembled. Shueiyue's eyes turned red and she nodded slowly. "Master. Master." Before he could finish speaking, Song Lanyi didn't hesitate to put on a cloak. He was dressed in plain green clothes, took off his whip, and coldly said, "Prepare your horse." It was already past dinner time, but the medical clinic in Dingyuan City was crowded with people. Even outside the clinic, there are still many horses lingering. The hospital is brightly lit and the atmosphere is extremely serious. On the straw mat, holding a bearded man with 4 or 5 severed arrows on his chest. The arrows were pierced with terrifying spikes. If pulled out by brute force alone, it may not be long before the big man will bleed to death. On the high hall of the clinic, there sat a man with a handsome appearance and a cold and stern face. For a long time, he looked at the doctor sweating profusely and said, "How is the injury?" In the winter of Shua Bay, the doctor's back was still sweating profusely. After careful consideration, he finally said cautiously, "The prince also knows that in the cold and bitter north of Shua, there is hardly anyone with excellent medical skills. If the doctors in the hospital were here, there might be a possibility of recovery. This is preparing to hire someone else. However, there is 1,000 miles of land in Liangzhou based on this, and I am afraid that the patient may die due to turbulence and bleeding before arriving in Liangzhou." Upon hearing these words, the soldiers below immediately burst into tears and said, "Lord, you can't just watch Mr. Song disappear. Although he has no age above, there is still a daughter below. What will happen to his daughter once he leaves?" And this intelligence was also obtained through life and death by Song Fuchang. "You can't." Ming Wang rubbed his eyebrows with a headache, wishing to kick away these rolling knife meat with one foot. Governance. Of course it has to be treated. If left untreated, wouldn't it make the people below feel cold? But this doesn't prevent him from liking these rolling knife meat. After pondering for a moment, Ming Wang spoke up and said, "Go to the warehouse." Halfway through, the sound of a galloping horse suddenly came from outside the clinic. Immediately after, the sound of the whip swinging on the ground sounded. Song Lanyi, the daughter of the Grand Master Song Hanhai, came to pay his respects to the prince. Ming Wang's eyebrows furrowed even deeper. In his mind, he couldn't help but imagine a young girl crying and crying. He sighed. "What else can we stop? Come on in." At the entrance of the medical clinic, a thin and weak girl in blue lifted the curtain and walked quickly towards the direction where the Ming King was. As soon as she entered the room, she smelled the bloody smell in the drifting air. When Song Lanyi saw the bearded man lying on the grass mat, his eyes lit up. "I don't know whether it's fate or something." After removing his beard, the man's facial features are exactly the same as her father in her previous life. I don't know if it was a spiritual connection or something, but at the moment Song Lanyi entered, Song Hanhai broke free from his coma and struggled to look at Song Lanyi, squeezing out a smile. "Clothes, don't be afraid, go home quickly. Be good, go back and take a nap. Tomorrow morning, Dad will come to see you." The people in the room didn't quite enjoy hearing it. Even the Ming King couldn't help but marvel at Song Hanhai's love for women through his martial arts. Song Lanyi felt even more bitter in her heart. She didn't talk nonsense, didn't say a word, and knelt down in front of Song Hanhai. Others wanted to stop, but before they could speak, Song Lanyi took out a porcelain bottle and sprinkled light yellow hemostatic powder on Song Hanhai's wound. The doctor at the clinic became anxious and said, "Hey, you little girl, even if you're in a hurry, you shouldn't be taking medication recklessly. You're really..." The doctor wanted to continue speaking, but suddenly heard the soldier next to him scream in surprise. "Blood! The blood has stopped. Song Fuchang is saved." Ming Wang's face was slightly shocked and he walked quickly to Song Hanhai's side. The wound, which was originally constantly bleeding, has now stopped bleeding. At this moment, his gaze toward Song Lanyi was vastly different. Although Song Lanyi has not yet learned the scriptures and has officially embarked on the path of enlightenment. But with her expertise in pharmaceuticals alone, she can be compared to a disciple of a ninth-grade doctor. You should know that in this world, whether it is Confucianism, Taoism, military Taoism, medical Taoism, or other Taoism, there are all 9 grades, with 1 grade being the extreme and 9 grades being the end. And above the first grade, there are saints. Dingyuan City is desolate, with few medical disciples coming. But now it seems. Inside Dingyuan City, there are actually hidden dragons and tigers. A young girl's methods of treating illness and saving lives are comparable to those of a legitimate disciple of a doctor. I saw that Song Lanyi was skilled in movements, clearing wounds, stopping bleeding, and pulling arrows. When the arrow is finally pulled out, there is only a blood hole left. The bystander glanced and couldn't help but admire. Although the injury is not completely healed yet, it is extremely rare to be able to achieve such a level. Upon hearing these words, Song Lanyi gave the person a strange look on her face. She took out a porcelain bottle from her arms, poured out a green pattern health pill, and placed it in her father's mouth. I saw the flesh and blood opening in Song Hanhai's chest and abdomen heal at a visible speed to the naked eye. For a moment, the entire hospital was speechless. On the side of him, the Ming King appeared calm with his eyebrows and eyes, but in fact, he had already stirred up a storm in his heart. Green-striped flawless pill that can produce skin. This is Shengji Wan. At this moment, the position of Song Lanyi in his heart cannot be ignored. What is the relationship between this girl and the medicine saint? If there are manuscripts available for the new book period, we will send out 1 chapter each around 12, noon and 6 p.m. Each chapter still has 2,000 words. Today, I was addicted to coding and forgot to post it. I apologize. Kneeling down gently, end of this chapter. Chapter 4. The Qian Wen Bao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. The Qian Wen Bao. At this moment, Song Hanhai touched the healed wound on his body with a surprised expression on his face. Touching it, his eyes turned red. An 8-foot-tall man, with tears in his eyes, seemed to be crying instead of crying. "Girl. How can such a good thing be used on my father? My father is just a rough person, and this injury can be taken care of. How is it worth using this good thing?" After speaking, he quietly glanced at the Ming King on the high seat. Ming Wang's face was cold and hard, making it difficult to distinguish between joy and anger. Then, Song Hanhai continued to howl, "Daughter, you're not even in the last 9-level realm yourself. These things are all meant to save your life. Your father and I work for the prince. How could the prince not be able to take out this healing medicine?" Ming Wang had long known the personality of Song Hanhai, a rolling knife meat, but despite this, when he heard the last sentence, he couldn't help but laugh angrily. This is a thrilling tactic. Prepare for him to patch up some good things for Song Lanyi. Song Lanyi's eyelids twitched wildly as she listened. She silently glanced at her familiar yet somewhat unfamiliar father, then at the imposing Ming Wang, and coughed lightly, "Dad, actually. I still have quite a few of these things." Song Hanhai. His eyes turned red again. He lovingly touched his daughter's head. "Silly girl, why is Dad doing this? Dad is trying to benefit you. Alas, my daughter is so foolish. What would I do without him as a father? As soon as Song Hanhai was about to say something, he saw Song Lanyi turn around and look at Ming Wang, bowing. The north of Shuo is cold and difficult, with few physicians stationed here. Even if the court instigates, it is only a drop in the bucket for the 100,000 Pinyin army. I grew up in Shuo North, only wishing it were not a man's body, and cannot kill enemies with poetry. Now that I have come across a few remedies, I am only willing to devote myself to the military and become a pharmacist, which can also be considered as my humble contribution to the Pinyin army strategy. Ming Wang raised his eyebrows. This is really effortless. Although Ming Wang didn't have much conscience, he still asked one more question, are you sure? The bitter cold in the north of Shuo is not something to say. Song Hanhai behind Song Lanyi was frantically frowning and making eyes. Song Lanyi seemed to have thought of something and gritted her teeth, I'm sure. There is another hidden truth behind this. Ming Wang's mind turned rapidly, and he gave a glance to the attendant beside him before nodding slightly. I know, you can go back with peace of mind. Your father has made great contributions this time, so please rest assured. The sky is already dark, let's go back. The eunuch hurried over when the person had gone far away. He whispered a few words in the ear of the Ming king. Ming Wang's face suddenly darkened. Zhong Rui. But even a clown who jumps off a beam dares to be so reckless. He leaned back in his chair, squinted his eyes, and said, send me an order. General Zhong Rui, the son of the general, will be whipped 200 times after disregarding military rules and bullying the commander. The eunuch was surprised and said, Your Highness, if these 200 lashes are passed down, the person will be half useless. The one from the general's mansion is still there. Ming Wang sneered, if it weren't for Zhong Lingfeng, it wouldn't have been as simple as whipping 200 times. Besides, Zhong Lingfeng is just a dog of. If it weren't for that, I would have chopped him off. Seeing the resolute tone of King Ming, the eunuch couldn't help but be shocked by his murderous spirit. He quickly looked at his nose, and heart, retreated to the left side, and stopped speaking. Ming Wang lightly clasped his fingertips on the table and said, I'm willing to be cut all over and dare to pull the generals off their horses. Song Hanhai, this girl, is not ordinary. I don't know. Can this strange story be published in the Qian Wen Bao? Returning home in the snowy night. Inside the Song residence. After listening to what Zhong Rui did, Song Hanhai suddenly punched the table. Song Lanyi looked at the cracks on the solid wood table, then at her father's sand bowl-sized fist, her eyelids twitching wildly. In an instant, the father's angry scolding came over. His grandmother Dixiong, what kind of bullshit is the son of a general? Even his skinny monkey-like appearance is worth looking for my daughter. Grandma Dixiong, I have to go beat him. Cough, I said to him. After speaking, Song Hanhai hurriedly walked out. Song Lanyi felt helpless. Didn't you say, what are you doing with a burlap bag? Tonight, it is destined to be a sleepless night. Shangjing. This is the core of the Qian dynasty and also the headquarters of the Qian Wen Bao. At this moment, the genius is shining brightly, and the stars in the sky have not yet hidden. At the headquarters of the newspaper, there was only the rustling sound of the pen nib and paper surface as the pages were transcribed. At this moment, there was a faint, gurgling sound outside the window. I saw a pigeon outside the window, completely white and round in shape, with eyes the size of mung beans. It looked indoors, tilted its head, and let out a few more sounds. The scholar by the window took off the letter and first frowned while reading, but soon his eyebrows raised high and he couldn't help but burst out laughing. Willing to be cut all over, dare to pull the participating generals off their horses. Amazing, amazing. I didn't expect such a strange woman to be in the north of Qianshuo. Attendees. This name has touched the heartstrings of many people. Many literati responsible for copying looked up and said, "But the news from the northern region." The scholar smiled but remained silent, showing off for a while before handing them the letter paper. "You'll know what you're looking at," he said at first. The others were somewhat indifferent, but when they saw behind them, their faces were extremely strange. Some people are shaking their heads and minds, savoring half a line of poetry written by Song Lanyi. Good poetry, good poetry. Although this poem is too plain and straightforward, it is amazing when placed in such a situation. The spirit of this young girl in song is no less than that of a man. Yeah, it's a pity. She's not a man. Shoo, don't mention that. This year's proposal by the saints, the 100 Flowers sage also proposed to open up scientific research scriptures for women, but was rejected by the saints, saying that the world lacks talent. However, the 100 Flowers sage has made a big fuss. One of the scholars coughed lightly and said, "All right, are saints something we can discuss recklessly? Focus on copying." For a moment, the rustling sound of copying echoed again in the study. As the sky gradually brightened, the Qian Wen Bao was transcribed and printed. When the streets of Shangji were filled with the sound of morning vendors cheering and selling, the various sales points of the Qian Wen Bao were packed with people. During this period, some people received the complete version of the newspaper as soon as possible. These people are storytellers who roam between various inns and taverns. In the tea house and tavern, there is a bustling atmosphere of human fireworks. A tall and skinny young man stood on the stage, tapping his wooden hand and pulling out a copy of the Qian Wen Bao. The tea drinkers under the stage either blew the wonton in front of them or bared the noodles, pricked up their ears and listened to the storyteller reading the contents of the newspaper. But it was said that the war in Shuabei had slowed down a bit, and Ming Wang led his troops back to Dingyuan City last night to intercept the secret report from the demon barbarians. The storyteller's voice was high, and there were occasional voices of discussion below. In the crowd, a young boy about 11 or 12 years old had agile eyes. When he heard how Ming Wang had killed 3 in and 3 out among the demonic and barbarian masses, he even showed a longing expression on his face. Beside him stood a young man with a white face, his eyes sharp and alert, looking around, taking the opportunity to move. Today's session ends. Wishing everyone a pleasant Friday. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Teacher, the road doesn't walk that way. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Teacher, the road doesn't walk that way. Every autumn and winter, the demon barbarians will plunder the city south due to food shortages. This year's actions have been even more aggressive. Therefore, the matter of Shuabei is a concern for many tea guests present. When hearing the smooth return of the Ping'an army and the shining smoke and flames, the heads of the demonic barbarians rolled down to the ground, and many straightforward people applauded directly. Okay. The eldest husband is here, so be it. Only hate me for being thin and unable to be selected into the Ping'an army. Ping Yao Man, guard the 4 directions. This is Qian's son. For a moment, several cents of silver were added to the stage. The storyteller's smile was even greater as he opened the next page of the newspaper and scanned it roughly. In the next moment, he raised his eyebrows. He didn't believe in evil and looked at it a few more times before coughing lightly. Don't worry, officials. We just talked about the peace army in Shuabei, and the news in the newspaper happened to come from the daughter of 1,000 commander of the peace army. Ha! Surprisingly, a woman also appeared in the Qian Wen Bao. Although this has happened before, it's too rare to see. The woman who appeared in the previous article is now known as the Saint of Flowers. The tea guests below were all attracted to their attention. Even the young man in a white shirt couldn't help but lean forward slightly, revealing a posture of listening attentively. The storyteller coughed twice before slowly saying, "Speaking of Ding'an City in the north of Shua, there was a daughter named Song Lanyi, a daughter of the 1,000 husband Song Hanhai. She had a beautiful appearance and a humble personality." As the storyteller spoke, everyone gradually fell in love. I only hate the son of the general, Zhong Rui, who has a luxurious and lustful nature. Seeing the beauty of Song Lanyi, I took advantage of the absence of the Ming king and wanted to forcibly rob a commoner's daughter. I took the only daughter of a military household as my seventh concubine. Pop. With a loud bang, a loud roar followed. This guy is not as good as a beast. Don't let the young master catch that Zhong Rui, otherwise he will have to be skinned. I saw the young man in the black shirt blushing with anger. Seeing his appearance, he wished he could eat his meat and drink his blood. Although the other tea guests were not as angry, their faces were not very attractive. In the tea house, a young man coldly said, according to the rule of Emperor Taizu, descendants of military households should not be bullied without reason. Otherwise, the crime can be punished and exiled for thousands of miles. That Zhong Rui is a commoner, and his father Zhong Lingfeng is a general. Coincidentally, my father is the imperial envoy of the imperial censorate. What is the imperial envoy for? It can be said that the imperial envoys are the most carefree group besides saints. Don't be fooled by their low rank, but they all come from noble backgrounds and can fight against heaven and earth. Are you unhappy with your colleagues? Damn it. Are you unhappy with the emperor? Damn it. Are you unhappy with the feudal lord? Still fighting. Even they can bring up a fight against the emperor's recent palace curtains. Are you angry or not? Are you annoyed or not? If you're bothering me, come and hit me anyway. They didn't kill anyone. When they boasted privately, they could even say that they had been beaten by the emperor and were a great official. As soon as I thought about the publication of today's Wen Bao, there might be snowflakes of impeachment memorials flying to the cabinet and the tables of Emperor Tianzhou. For a moment, the tea house was filled with this joyful atmosphere. On the other side, the young man in blue couldn't help but feel itchy and said, "Sir, what happened later?" That girl in blue was kidnapped as the mistress of that animal. Guy. The storyteller shook his head and sighed, if that's the case, how could this woman appear in the newspaper? At that time, Zhong Rui was imposing and had dozens of servants by his side. However, Miss Song's face remained indifferent and Tan's mouth lightly spat out. I'm willing to cut myself all over, dare to pull the general off the horse. At that time, the strong wind was raging, and the sky was about to roar. A red rabbit and horse were approaching from afar. A man in armor, with phoenix eyes and majestic demeanor, carried a long spear and wore a purple and gold crown on his head. The spear carried the plaque of the general's mansion. This poem is half completed and has already become a county poem. Moreover, this poem expresses one's emotions directly and is simple and straightforward. Although it was written by women, it has the same boldness and freedom as men. Okay. As soon as the words fell, cheers rang out from the audience. There was also a young lady wearing a curtain hat, clapping her hands and laughing. There was a saint of flowers in the front, and a young lady from the Song family in the back. Who said that women are not as good as men? The young man in black clothes beside him was lost in thought. In an instant, he suddenly whispered, "Phone companion, Ben. I want to go to Shuaibei." Phone companion, who originally had a calm expression, suddenly changed his expression and said, "Young master, this Shuaibei is so easy that we can't go. If you have any obstacles, it will really cost our lives." Shu. The young man in the red shirt raised his finger and placed it in front of his lips. "Phone companion, we have sneaked out now. You can't leave our family alone. You can just call yourself me." And the young man's eyes were shining brightly. A good man has aspirations in all directions. I don't want to listen to the Confucianism that the gentleman talked about, so I might as well go to Shuaibei. And I also want to see how despicable Zhong Rui is. Phone companion on the side hesitated to speak, but in the end, all his words turned into a deep sigh. Shuaibei. Dingyuan City. Due to staying up all night, Song Lan's clothes were still upside down day and night, falling into a deep sleep. However, within the space, she was still writing vigorously, copying notes from the medicine classic. She sat at the desk, in front of him, facing a picture of a medicinal herb, chatting confidently. As Song Lanyi lowered her head to take notes, the gaze of the medicine saint became somewhat complicated. Over the past few days, he has also figured out Song Lanyi's temperament. Good at learning, with a strong thirst for knowledge, and a curious impulse towards everything. It can be said that she is a perfect seedling for learning medicine. However, it is precisely this that makes the medicine saint somewhat hesitant. He hesitated. Whether to teach Song Lanyi the true inheritance. Just because Song Lanyi is a woman. The medicine saint never underestimates or discriminates against women. But people will have biases. Even the seemingly ruthless heavenly way has many restrictions on women. To achieve long-term success on this path, one needs both talent and perseverance. If it's a woman, she also needs to have a strong inner strength after undergoing numerous trials and tribulations. Lan Yi. Song Lanyi lifted her head and said in confusion, "Teacher. I have two paths here that I want to teach you. One path is for you to learn various prescriptions from me. Even if you don't have the ability to infuse your body and embark on the path of cultivating immortality, you can still live a peaceful life. What about the second path? The second road is a thorny road with no shortcuts to take and gravel everywhere. The road ahead is bumpy, and what you will suffer is not only the prejudice of not being able to participate in scientific examinations, but also the contempt of women by the world. Even so, you still have to shoulder the responsibility of guarding the border. Have you made a decision?" Upon hearing this, Song Lanyi laughed instead. She instinctively helped her non-existent glasses first, and then said calmly, "Teacher, for me, the road is not like this." The medicinal sage was piqued by these words. "I am just a short-sighted person. I cannot give up walking this path just because the outcome of the journey is unpredictable. What I care about is the scenery along this path. I think my life may not need to be grand, as long as I go through it once and see many scenery, that's enough. Besides..." She suddenly raised her hand, and a green aura appeared in her palm. "Teacher, this thing should be just talent, right? I have already embarked on this unknown path." Today's first update, end of this chapter. Chapter 6. Huangdi Neijing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Huangdi Neijing. Facing the astonishment of the medicine saint, Song Lanyi smiled slightly. "Teacher, there is a saying in Zhuangxing's journey to the west, Tiao and Shuejiu laughed and said, 'I will rise up and fly, snatch the elm beam and stop, and the time will not come. I will only control the ground. She will travel 90,000 miles to the south.' The cold cicada and the gray sparrow do not know the height of the peng bird, so they mock the peng bird for wasting their efforts. When people read this article, they will only ridicule the insignificance of the cold cicada and the gray sparrow. However, in the eyes of those strong and even saints, we are only the cold cicada and the gray sparrow. Teacher, I don't want to talk about defending people's borders or defending our country. For me, the world is vast, and I just want to make my limited life infinitely wonderful. And the wonder of this world is the flower that belongs to the hands of the strong, harvested." The medicine saint rarely hears Song Lanyi's lengthy remarks like this. Therefore, he remained silent for a long time. After a moment, he smiled helplessly and said, "Lan Yi, you shouldn't have studied medicine. Your temperament is more suitable for the lineage of Huang Lao's teachings. The Huang Lao doctrine is a branch of Taoism that emphasizes non-action." Song Lanyi just smiled. She pointed to space and smiled, "Maybe there will be a chance in the future." The medicine saint understood with a smirk and said, "Yes, I forgot that you still have a great chance." After speaking, he turned serious and said, stop talking nonsense. Today, what I want to pass on to you is the teachings of the scriptures. As is well known, the imperial examination requires studying the scriptures and teachings of the sages, among which the most famous is Kong Sheng's Analects. Students can acquire talent and increase their cultivation during the process of studying scriptures. However, due to the limited talent distributed by the heavenly way, women are naturally unable to take the imperial examination. But this does not mean that women cannot practice. Before, there was a saint of flowers, and later there was Emperor Sun and Moon who monopolized the world as a woman. These can all be called a generation of proud women. Why is this? As the saying goes, there are 3,000 great paths, but one must be avoided. The heavenly way will always leave a glimmer of vitality. Although women cannot pass the imperial examination, they can use other paths to cultivate and become saints. For example, the 100 Flowers sage uses the illusory way to become saints. The Sun and Moon Emperor uses the imperial way to dominate the human realm. Different paths have different scriptures, which are the core of absorbing talent. The meaning of my medicinal path is the Yellow Emperor's inner canon, which is the most moderate and peaceful. Moreover, the most important thing is, it is very suitable for you. Upon hearing these words, Song Lanyi became interested and said, "Teacher, why did you say this?" The medicine saint stroked his beard and said slowly, "You have a precious treasure with you, and you are destined to learn different paths in the future. Learning the Yellow Emperor's inner canon can better help you integrate the talents of different paths." Song Lanyi's face was solemn as he stood up and bowed deeply. "Thank you, teacher, for planning for me," he said. The medicine saint waved his hand with a smile and said, "There's no need for complicated formalities. Since you have talent, I will pass on the scriptures and a few techniques to you." After speaking, he pointed at Song Lanyi's forehead. Song Lanyi felt a darkness in front of her and broke away from the space. Subsequently, information about major stocks flooded into my mind. The blue talent that was originally stored in her body is now slowly swimming along her meridians, devouring all the impurities that were originally stored in her body. After a while, Song Lanyi slowly opened her eyes, her face pink and tender, with a feeling of vitality. The Yellow Emperor's inner canon is truly the pinnacle of medicinal teachings, not only possessing a moderate and peaceful nature, but also enhancing physical fitness. At this moment, a sound came from outside the door. "Miss, the master has called you to the front yard to meet guests." Song Lanyi was taken aback and then said, "I'm here." She slightly washed up, tidied up her hairstyle, and took a step outside. Head can be broken, blood can flow, hairstyle cannot be messy. As she walked to the front yard, Song Lanyi saw many shadowy figures. Due to the presence of outsiders, Song Lanyi gave a face-saving salute and pretended to be puzzled, saying, "Father, this is..." Before Song Hanhai could speak, there was an old man with a goatee sitting next to him, smiling and saying, "Miss Song, good news, great news. You have been admitted to the White Deer Academy as a student." Unconsciously, Song Lanyi's eyes darkened. "Grandma, do you have to study in the morning and evening again?" Song Lanyi doesn't reject learning, but she hates waking up early. However, she did not immediately refuse. When her mind calmed down, she even had some movement. Because the White Deer Academy is not only the best academy in Dingyuan City, but also the top academy in the entire Shangjing and even the entire Qian dynasty. The White Deer College in Dingyuan City is just a branch. "Miss Song, don't think that all the imperial examinations, classics, and Confucian classics in the academy are useless for your cultivation," said the old man with a goat beard. "In fact, the Book of the Sage, even if one cannot kill enemies, can still have a clear mind. Most importantly, this time, the White Deer Academy will open a mirror of mountains and seas." Shanheijing. Xiami Dong Dong. On the high seat, Song Hanhai took a deep breath and said, "Sir, the mirror of mountains and seas, is it the precious treasure created by a few saints who have mobilized forces from outside the region? The old goat man chuckled and said, what's in Shuabe College is just a faint shadow of a mountain and sea mirror. Of course, although it's just a faint shadow, it's also infinitely mysterious. Song Hanhai felt an unbearable itch and wished he could attend college. Despite this, he did not make an arbitrary decision. Instead, he looked at Song Lanyi, with a furrowed beard on his face, and pretended to be a kind father. He softly said, do ee want to go to the White Deer Academy? The old goat-bearded man's expression remained unchanged on his face, but deep down he was surprised. Rumors in the market say that Song Fuchang, the commander of the Ping'an army, although only one woman, loves like a treasure. Last night, he disregarded military regulations and beat up Zhong Rui's servant in the middle of the night. He thought that after offering such conditions, Song Hanhai would directly decide to send Song Lanyi to the college. Who knew, he would also ask his daughter's opinion. Fortunately, Song Lanyi only considered for a moment before nodding and saying, Dad, I want to go. Song Hanhai smiled and said, since that's the case, please trouble Mr. Bai. As soon as Mr. Bai left, Song Hanhai remained calm and dignified. He patted the table and smiled up, ha ha ha, my daughter has also entered the White Deer Academy. As I have said before, my daughter has always been as good as anyone else since she was born. Zhong Rui, that useless person, has come to this point and also wants to touch my daughter, Song Hanhai. Song Lanyi raised her finger and placed it in front of her lips, Shoo, Dad, stop speaking, stop speaking. Mr. Bai hasn't gone far yet. The laughter came to a sudden halt. Outside, there was a burst of suppressed laughter. Until he walked out of the Song mansion, Mr. Bai still laughed so hard that his goatee trembled. After finishing his smile, he let out a complex sigh and said, Song Hanhai, this reckless man, has a deep love for women with his fists and fists. Today is over, it's the editor of the manuscript, end of this chapter. Chapter 7. Playing Lanterns in a Thatched Cottage. Finding Sure. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Playing Lanterns in a Thatched Cottage. Finding Sure at the Ming Prince's mansion. The Ming King lay in front of the table, writing a bright yellow secret fold. Chenju Mingjing has a preface. A few days ago, I heard that there was a strange phenomenon in the southern part of the demonic barbarians, and I was afraid of any changes. So, I ordered the 1,000 Commander Song Hanhai to investigate one or two. Song Hanhai is a rough and fine person with a clear family background, and his strategy is appropriate, which can be used greatly. As he said, the demonic barbarians gradually gathered in the south, and the power of heaven and earth in the southern region has faintly changed. Based on this, I boldly speculate that there may be a secret realm in the southern part of the demonic barbarians. Since Emperor Taizu, I have been guarding 108 secret realms for 100 years, and now there are changes in heaven and earth. Is there an anomaly about to arise? The ownership of the present is determined by His Majesty. Although the journey is far, the matter is firm, and although I am not talented, I am willing to make an effort to go. After finishing all of this, the Ming King folded the secret seal and whispered. Who in the clouds sends brocade books? When the word Yen returns, the moon fills the western tower. As soon as the words fell, a wild goose appeared on the table. The wild goose's gaze was agile, and when it saw the secret fold, its gaze revealed a solemn and humane expression. I saw it nod to the Ming King, then take the dense fold in its mouth and fly away with its wings spread out. And the direction it flies towards is precisely Shangjing. In front of the White Deer Academy. The students here are all dressed in moonlit white robes. When chatting and laughing, they are all quoting classics, and when interacting, they are all scholars of great learning. Here, even talent is more active than elsewhere. Just today's White Deer Academy is a bit noisy. What? How could that slut get into the academy? Does she think that all the men in this academy would be deceived by her appearance? Pooh, what a stinky woman! Watch, still pretending to be a chaste and strong woman. Sooner or later, she will be like a dog, begging me to marry her. This vulgar language is really disgusting, and some students in the academy can't help but show their angry faces. There was a student with a displeased face who was about to speak when he was grabbed by someone beside him. Are you not going to die? Zhong Rui is the son of the general, and there is a shadow of an elder behind him. If you confront him because of this, your career will be cut off for the most part from now on. As soon as he finished speaking, a 9-foot-long, muscular man walked towards him in the distance. He frowned and spoke in a thunderous voice, Zhong Rui, what nonsense are you talking about here? Zhong Rui glanced at him, his eyes narrowed slightly. Only then did they know that Ming Wang personally guarded and was specially recommended by Ming Wang to study at the White Deer Academy. Although my learning situation is not very good, I am indeed an official generation with a strong relationship and a reliable background. Others are afraid of joining the general, but this guy doesn't care. Just as I was thinking about it, there was a young girl dressed in blue like a lotus coming from afar. Her face was elegant, but her words were as sharp as a blade. Oh, it's a pity I came a step late. I didn't hear Mr. Zhong's crazy and contradictory words. After finishing speaking, Song Lanyi sighed and said, I just have one thing that I don't understand. As Lord Zhong said, all students in the academy will be confused by me. Do you mean that all senior brothers can only distinguish people by appearance? Or is it to say that the teachers of the academy, mixed with fish and pearls, have allowed a group of fish and pearls to enter the academy while keeping the pearls in the dust? Zhong Rui's face looked a bit ugly. Even though he is the son of a general, after all. He is just a general. How dare he confront so many students and even teachers? He observed the people around him with his spare light, and the expressions on the faces of these students were somewhat unsightly. It's okay if you don't say it, but as soon as you say this, they inevitably feel a little disgusted. This Zhong Rui is so rampant. Zhong Rui's chest rapidly undulated and he said in a resentful voice, a woman is just a woman, she can only show off her eloquence. I don't have the same understanding as you, a woman. Song Lanyi doesn't like to hear this anymore. Damn it, if you fight, you fight. You even attack my gender. You are playing lanterns in the thatched cottage. Looking for death. Song Lan rolled up her sleeves and casually picked up the bronze cauldron placed in front of the academy. She took a few brisk steps forward, and only then did her internal energy circulate and hit Zhong Rui straight. Zhong Rui's heart almost stopped in fear when he saw this scene. Crazy. This lunatic. His father is Zhong Lingfeng. How dare this lowly servant and kill him? That's not right. She seems to really dare. Zhong Rui's heart was not good, and he almost exhausted all his life's effort to breastfeed, crawling and running to the other side. Only a dull, dong sound was heard, and the big cauldron brushed past him. Zhong Rui didn't have time to reflect on Song Lanyi's divine power, he just instinctively engaged in 2 battles. He never imagined that death was so close to him. Before he could recover from his shock, he heard the wind blowing in waves. A fist rushed straight towards his face. Bang! Zhong Rui felt a tingling sensation at the tip of his nose, followed by a sticky liquid flowing down. He touched the tip of his nose and only saw blood on one hand. On the other hand, when Song Lanyi saw him like this, she felt that most of his depression had dissipated. She relied on her physical fitness, which was comparable to 9th grade and almost 8th grade, to suppress Zhong Rui's breathing. The fists and feet, as fast as arrows, were as swift as a gust of wind and rain, almost making Zhong Rui gasp for breath. The servant beside him blushed with anxiety and said, "Don't fight, don't fight. The injury on the young master's body is just right, I can't help but fight again." Song Lanyi stepped on Zhong Rui's chest with one foot, her hands on her hips, and her cheeks were slightly pink due to exercise. She said in her voice, "His injuries are healed, but my injuries are not yet healed. Zhong Rui first forced me to be his concubine, and then repeatedly insulted me. If I don't take this breath, it will hinder my path. Isn't this White Deer Academy not a success for Zhong Rui's family? Why does he curse whenever he wants and disgust me whenever he wants?" The more Song Lanyi spoke, the more she felt wronged. "Bastard! Scumbag!" She kicked Zhong Rui again and said, "I am a woman, but what about women? Do you dare Zhong Rui to say in front of the 100 Flowers sage that no matter how hard she tries, even if she is a saint, she is just a little woman who is destined to be a husband and a child in the backyard in the future? Such remarks are so absurd. The sage once said, "Heaven and earth are not benevolent and treat all things as mere dogs." In order to maintain balance, the heavenly way regards fairness as the principle of operation. Even if there is a lack of talent, there is still a path for women to follow. If the heavenly way is still like this, how dare you, Zhong Rui, say that I am just a woman? After speaking, Song Lanyi sneered, "A fool like you, 300 years ago, there was no one like you, 300 years later, there was no one like you." Puzzling. In the crowd, I don't know who laughed first. Immediately after, these students didn't care about the general's mansion behind Zhong Rui and covered their sleeves with low smiles. This Miss Song may seem elegant and refined, but in reality, she unexpectedly comes down to earth. Zhong Rui scolded him, and she had 100 words to mock, ridicule, and refute him. Song Lanyi lowered her legs and bowed to the other senior brothers and sisters, intending to step into the White Deer Academy. At this moment, Zhong Rui suddenly sat up from the ground, with a face covered in blue and purple, and a gloomy expression on his face. "Song Lanyi, in terms of debating ability, I may not be as good as you. But don't forget, your father is just a centurion, and my father is a serious third-rank general." End of this chapter. I am familiar with Chapter 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. This question. I'm familiar with it. Zhong Rui can't fight or scold, are you ready to ask the old man to come out and help? This trick is really old, but who said she would follow the old routine? Song Lanyi raised her eyebrows, turned around, and took out a book from the bookcase behind her. There are 4 big characters written on it. The Qian Wen Bao. Song Lanyi smiled with a reserved smile. I forgot to tell young Master Zhong. My daughter is not talented, and she just appeared in this issue of Qian Wen newspaper. According to the Lord, the Superior wants to build a moral memorial archway for me. A blush rose on her cheeks and she looked shy. Puff. A mouthful of fresh blood surged upwards and sprayed out directly from Zhong Rui's mouth. At the moment he fell, his eyes were still fixed on Song Lanyi, saying, "Poison, poison woman. Damn Song Lanyi. Who can take her away? It is said that only petty people and women are difficult to raise." What the sage said is indeed true. Song Lanyi looked at the fallen Zhong Rui and smiled with a reserved smile. Don't blame her. She just said a few words. After finishing all of this, she closed her bookcase and continued walking towards the depths of the White Deer Academy. Just as she turned around and left, a sneaky figure appeared at the entrance of the White Deer Academy. I saw him take off his face scarf, smile and open his big white teeth. She is truly the daughter of Song Hanhai, more than that bastard surname Zhong. The 2 subordinates on the side exchanged a glance but remained silent. I don't know why, they just feel that. Song Fuchang's daughter is not at all like he, a reckless man, could give birth to. At this moment, inside the White Deer Academy. At the entrance of the White Deer Academy, there is a sundial that can determine time based on the direct projection of the sun. When the projection slowly rotates and coincides with one of the scales on the sundial, a clear sound comes from inside the academy. This clear and melodious sound gives people a pleasant and peaceful feeling. Due to Song Lanyi being a well-known woman above, her treatment was not bad, and she happened to be assigned to Class A. As soon as he entered the study room, he heard the sound of Lang Lang reading. The young man's voice was clear and occasionally mixed with the gentle and beautiful voice of a woman, giving Song Lanyi a feeling of dreaming back to high school. She walked into the classroom quietly and found a remote place to sit down. However, after a while, the master came in holding a thick stack of paper. Confucius has a face with a Chinese character, slightly black skin, and walks with a tiger-like gait, exuding a military aura. He seemed to glance briefly, but in reality, his gaze slightly paused as he looked at Song Lanyi. When he saw Song Lanyi entering the school for the first time, he didn't first get to know the people around him, but instead lowered his head and studied the classics seriously, which made his impression of her better. The black-faced master coughed slightly and said, "Before class starts today, I have 2 things to talk about. One thing, last week's Sutra of Sutong has been corrected, including 1 Class A and 13 Class B. As for the following, I won't go into detail. I just want to remind you once again that this is White Deer Academy, not anywhere else. This is the best Class A in the academy. If you don't work hard or strive hard, there will still be plenty of people outside, squeezing their heads and wanting to come in." After finishing speaking, he vaporized the thread and distributed the score strips printed with ranking scores to everyone. Upon seeing this, Song Lanyi couldn't help but exclaim in her heart. "Coach, I am familiar with this question. Isn't this the small bar for the high school exam? The ranking of grades and so on?" Almost instantly made Song Lanyi's DNA start to beat. Although we haven't entered the academy of the martial arts world, we are still the entire flower grower, with over 10 million people fighting each other out, standing at the top of the pyramid. Speaking of learning, this class-based and ranking-based learning immediately aroused her competitiveness. The black-faced master's gaze swept over the college below and focused on pausing among a few female students, as if pointing out, "Why is Kongxing the most famous among so many saints?" When you learn more about the teachings of Confucianism, you will naturally understand. Confucianism and Taoism, understanding one's true heart, maintaining proper etiquette, setting the 3 principles, and discussing the 5 constants. The way of a sage lies in these small things that can be easily seen. As the discussions among the students gradually subsided, the black-faced master said again, "Of course, due to the limitation of talent, women are not naturally advantageous in Confucianism, Taoism, and poetry. So here we will talk about the second thing." The students below were itching and unable to bear it, but dared not speak much and could only look at the teacher eagerly. The reason why my White Deer Academy can be spread throughout every corner of the Qian dynasty is partly due to the support of saints. Secondly, it has a mirror of mountains and seas. Shanhaijing. The first thing that popped out of Song Lanyi's mind was the bronze mirror located at the entrance of the White Deer Academy. The other students couldn't help but sit up straight when they heard the Shanhaijing. The mountain and sea mirror contains various paths, and according to the path you choose, different tests will appear in the mirror. The most important thing is, every time you pass the test, Shanhaijing will give you different rewards. It is rumored that if you pass the final level, the heavenly way will reward you with the heavenly giving proverbs. A divine motto. What kind of thing? Master seemed to see the curiosity of many students, but he just stroked his beard and deliberately didn't say anything. This also led to a group of students rushing towards the location of Shanhaijing after a day's class, unable to even afford to eat. Before reaching the divine object, Song Lanyi saw a yellow list mounted high. First place. Class B, Do Shiyuan, passed 2 levels. Second place. Class B, Wang Zheng, passed 2 levels. Almost all the remaining people on the list have only passed 1 level. Song Lanyi looked at the first name and was somewhat surprised. In the bitter cold of Shuabei, there are few women, even fewer women sent to academies, and even fewer who can achieve remarkable results in academies. Women cannot learn the teachings of the scriptures, and the master of the academy is not responsible for teaching other teachings. Unless you cheat like her, you can only self-study. She was thinking about it when suddenly she saw the team in front of her dividing into two sides. The crowd slowly retreated, and a slender and soft-armored woman, holding a long spear, walked up with a slight flick of her hair. She walked towards her in a bold and heroic manner. "Are you Song Lanyi?" She raised her eyebrows and asked. Song Lanyi looked at the expressions of the people around her, and a conjecture surged in her heart. She smiled and asked in reverse, "Are you Do Shiyuan?" Subsequently, both of them laughed and said in unison, "Exactly." Seeing Song Lanyi's generous behavior, Do Shiyuan couldn't help but have some favorable feelings. She stopped Song Lanyi's shoulder and said, "Let's take a walk, junior sister. Today, I'll take you to see the mountain and sea mirror." After finishing speaking, she pinched Song Lanyi's shoulder and said as she walked, "Junior sister, you're still a little too thin. I usually work in the Ping'an army, so I'll bring you some pretty beef then. Girls, they need to be round to look good." The second update today, over see you tomorrow, end of this chapter. Chapter 9. Rewards. Burning Eyes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Rewards. Burning eyes. Listening to Do Shiyuan's chatter, Song Lanyi felt a bit amused in her heart. I thought this person had thick eyebrows and big eyes, like an imperial sister, but to my surprise, she was actually an old lady inside. She smiled and said, "You don't need to spend too much on beef. Actually, it can be done at no cost." Do Shiyuan felt a bit embarrassed. I heard. Junior sister has a medicine in her hand that can quickly stop bleeding and promote muscle growth. Song Lanyi looked shocked and said, "Senior sister, you're not being kind. I thought you were interested in me, but to my surprise, you were interested in my medicine." Do Shiyuan was about to say something when he heard Song Lanyi say, "Since that's the case, I can only accept it." Upon hearing these words, Do Shiyuan felt like riding a roller coaster, feeling up and down. Until she heard the end, she finally breathed a sigh of relief and couldn't help but slap Song Lan's shoulder with joy. "Good junior sister, senior sister really didn't see you wrong." Ao. Song Lanyi felt the area being photographed, and her skin instantly turned red. She looked at Do Shiyuan with a gloomy expression and said, "Senior sister, I'm only 9th grade." Do Shiyuan chuckled for a moment and said, "Senior sister is a rough person, don't blame her, don't blame her." Speaking so, Do Shiyuan couldn't help but mutter to himself in his heart. This junior sister is really a talented and graceful person. When she looked up with anger, there was a hint of childish charm, even a woman like her was willing to bow down. I don't know how Song Han Hai, that old man, gave birth to such a daughter. At the same time, Song Lanyi was also looking at this mountain and sea mirror. I saw a phantom projected from the mountain and sea mirror, where the light gathered and finally projected onto Song Lanyi's body. She felt like a flower in front of her, her figure had already moved to another world. This is a vast grassland, and within sight, one can vaguely see large patches of lush trees. The mountains are undulating, and there is a faint sound of tigers howling and deer chirping. From a professional perspective, Song Lanyi glanced over and saw many medicinal plants and trees. Strangely, the vegetation here is mostly used for hemostasis and muscle growth, followed by its anesthetic and sedative effects. The saying goes that if something goes wrong, there must be a demon. And due to the consideration of being prepared for the future, Song Lanyi kept going and collected a lot of medicinal herbs. Halfway through, she suddenly became alert and her muscles were tense all over. A faint smell of blood drifted in the air. At this moment, a voice came from Song Lanyi's ear. You want to move forward, but suddenly you smell a bloody smell. Curiosity makes you involuntarily walk towards the source of this breath. Song Lanyi noticed that her legs involuntarily walked towards the grass on her left. She's just a question mark in her head. Is this a force trigger for the plot? As she gradually approached a patch of grass, she heard a rough panting sound similar to that of a beast. At the same time, the bloody smell is becoming increasingly strong. She was forced to lift the grass and take a look, only to find that there were piles of demonic corpses piled up here. On the grass, there were piles of white bones scattered, and occasionally flesh pieces with blood-red texture. On the other side, a giant wolf with grey fur fell to the ground, with a bloody hole in his abdomen that looked extremely terrifying. Fortunately, the giant wolf's chest had a slight rise and fall, and it seemed that it had not yet fully died. At this moment, the sound in my ear rang out again. You poke open the grass and find a wolf demon with a hanging line of life. You have two choices. Adhering to the concept of equality among all beings and the sincerity of great doctors, we will treat this wolf demon. Secondly, you have no grudges or gratitude towards this wolf demon. You choose to turn a blind eye and leave this place. At this point, you choose. As soon as he finished speaking, Song Lanyi sneered and took out a medicinal hoe from behind, fiercely smashing it at the wolf demon. I choose. Obtuse angle. I don't know if it was Song Lanyi's illusion, but the sound in his ear stopped for a long time. It wasn't until the wolf demon was knocked out of breath by a hammer that the sound rang out. This wolf demon has no grudges or grievances against you. Why did you choose to kill him? After hearing these words, Song Lanyi laughed instead and said, when will killing demons and barbarians also require having grievances and grudges before they can be killed? As she spoke, she pointed her finger towards the pile of white bones. I saw Song Lanyi approaching the pile of white bones and lifting his hand to take out a white bone. This bone is integrated at both ends, with the proximal end swollen and protruding to both sides to form the medial ankle and lateral condyle. The length is approximately 12 inches. This bone is the tibia of an adult man. And based on the bite marks on the tibia, it can also match this grey wolf. Now, do you think I should kill this wolf demon? I am not someone who strongly opposes demons and barbarians, but I absolutely cannot accept cannibalistic demons and barbarians. The buttocks determine the stance, and the stance determines the thinking. Don't say that monsters eat people, it's because people also eat monsters. As a human race, Song Lanyi should speak from the perspective of the human race. Silence lasted for a long time. Suddenly, the sound of inorganic matter came from within the space. Passing the first level perfectly will reward you with an additional divine skill. Your eyes are as bright as a flame. Eyes burning with flames. Greatly enhances insight ability, can distinguish whether the demon barbarians have killed people. If the demon barbarians have killed people, a faint red light will appear at the edges of their body contours. Song Lanyi felt a slight wetness in her eyes, and when she opened her eyes again, she realized that the whole world seemed different. She could even see the ladybugs clearly on a blade of grass in the distant mountains. Song Lanyi instinctively turned back to look at the dead wolf demon. Sure enough, a faint red light lingered around the wolf demon. This is a good thing, externally. Everyone looked eagerly at the Shanhaijing, but due to Do Shiyuan standing in front, they were too scared to move. The Class A and Class B of the college are divided based on their scores in game theory and classics. But it's definitely not based on strength. This Do Shiyuan, who has been in the Ping'an army for 7 or 8 years, can almost be called a tyrant in the White Deer Academy. And she can enter the White Deer Academy with a backing behind her. She really got upset, even Zhong Rui had to step back 3 feet to avoid it. At this moment, the yellow list suddenly moved without wind. The students below exclaimed in surprise, I've written. Zhong Rui stood on the side, his face fierce and ugly. He wants to see what achievements Song Lanyi, this poisonous woman, can achieve. Coincidentally, a cry of surprise came from the crowd. Ah! Zhong Rui's face lit up with joy, and he wanted to turn his head. I just said, she's a woman. Words burst into his mouth, and Zhong Rui's face lit up with joy as he stared closely at the highest row of characters on the yellow list. First place, Class A, Song Lanyi, pass 1 level. Song Lanyi. First place. Zhong Rui felt a wave of dizziness. Suddenly, he shifted his gaze to the last 3 words. Pass 1 level. He exclaimed, this is impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Song Lanyi only passed 1 level, how could she rank at the top? Zhong Ruiyuan thought that when he said such words, the people of the White Deer Academy would doubt Song Lanyi to some extent. Unexpectedly, they all turned their heads and looked at Zhong Rui with a strange and pitiful gaze. Dou Shiyuan couldn't stand Zhong Rui anymore and sneered, Zhong Rui, haven't you been fighting chickens and walking dogs every day, forgetting the rules of ranking in the Shanhaijing? Zhong Rui was taken aback and said, what? The ranking of Shanhaijing's yellow list is determined based on the sum of specific scores in each level. Senior sister Song only passed 1 level and was able to win the top spot, which only shows that her method of handling the first level was extremely perfect. Zhong Rui. He felt as if he had been slapped on his face, which was burning with pain. Fortunately, everyone was paying attention to the movements on the yellow list, but they didn't pay too much attention to Zhong Rui. I'm late. Hurry up, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. What is the word tiger and wolf? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. What is the word tiger and wolf? Inside the Shanhaijing. Song Lan's body is located in a pure white space. In the space, there are pictures of herbs floating one after another. According to the voice in her ear, Song Lanyi requested to find the corresponding herbs mutually reinforcing and restraining substance within 3 breaths. If it weren't for the memory foundation of the past decade or so, as well as the memories learned during this period of time and space, Song Lanyi would not have been able to hold on until now. Just in this vast sea of herbal images, she hesitated for a moment before declaring failure. Song Lanyi looked at the large score in the space. 55. At that moment, she froze for a moment, and then her face showed a mixed expression. What? Out of 100, she's actually only 55. Damn it. Is she really too tender? After standing in place and reflecting for a moment, Song Lanyi put away the expression on her face, took a long breath, and her expression returned to calm. Today I am not proficient in my studies, with a perfect score of 100. It's shameful that I didn't even pass the exam. I will definitely give it another try in a few days. After speaking, she turned around and went offline. Just as she left, within a moment, a voice of doubt came from the void. Does she not know that the maximum score is 70 points? Also, what should be done with this reward? As soon as the words fell, muffled laughter echoed from within the space. Then, a female voice sounded, isn't she planning to give it another try? If she gets better results next time, she'll get a new skill. Externally. Song Lanyi once again appeared in front of the yellow list. Dou Shiyuan smiled and hugged her shoulder, junior sister, how do you feel? Song Lanyi let out a light sigh and looked sincere. I'm not very skilled in my studies, but I'm ashamed of my senior brothers and sisters. However, the more I've been defeated in battles, the more I have to fight and become braver. Dou Shiyuan. Numerous senior brothers and sisters. What kind of words are these? Girl, you've already taken the top spot, is this still embarrassing? What are these people really? If it weren't for Song Lanyi's sincere expression, they would have thought that this junior sister was mocking them. For a moment, everyone couldn't help but look at the calm yellow chart, their emotions complex and indescribable. Song Lanyi only felt that the atmosphere around her was a bit strange. She followed everyone's gaze and looked at the yellow list. She instinctively searched for her ranking from the bottom, but the more she looked, the more puzzled she became. At least she also passed one level. Although her grades were not ideal, why hasn't she been on the list yet? As a result, he lifted his head and glanced casually. Okay. At the top of the list. Song Lanyi finally understood why the atmosphere was so eerie. She looked at these senior brothers and sisters with a smirk and said, "Senior brother, senior sister. If. What I just said was an unintentional mistake." The students angrily said, "Get lost." Humph. I was hit. Song Lanyi coughed twice and Quan Dang said, "Since that's the case, junior sister, I'll take a step first. Senior brothers and sisters, see you tomorrow." She waved her sleeve and ran away without taking away a cloud. The next second, Do Shiyuan suddenly thought of something and quickly followed Song Lanyi, "Junior sister, don't forget the hemostatic powder and the muscle-activating pill." At this moment, the sunset is gradually sinking. After handing over the commonly prepared hemostatic powder and skin-activating pill to Do Shiyuan, Song Lanyi finally breathed a sigh of relief. Song Hanhai has important matters to attend to tonight, so he only has servants and Song Lanyi at home. Fortunately, such incidents often occur, and everyone is accustomed to them. So after finishing her meal, Song Lanyi reviewed the scriptures she learned today for a while, washed her fragrance, and then lay down in bed. In just a few seconds, almost touching the pillow, there came a gentle and long sound of breathing. Coincidentally, at this moment, Song Hanhai was rushing home, wearing stars and moon. He stood at the door, listening attentively. Before long, there was a faint mist in his eyes. A big man with a scruffy beard, his eyes turning red in amazement, said, "My obedient daughter seems to have been tired of going to school. At this point, she is still reading books, but now she gets stuck on a pillow and sleeps." The butler felt a bit helpless. He had long known what earth-shattering event Miss had done today when she went to the college. After pondering for a moment, he deliberately said, "How about not letting the young lady go to that academy?" As he finished speaking, Song Hanhai took a sniff and said harshly, "Go up. You must go up." Now, this great Qian dynasty may seem like a peaceful era, but who knows how long this peaceful era can last. If there really is a chaotic era, then there will be countless incidents of roommates fighting and siblings fighting against each other. Outside the territory, there will be even more demons and barbarians eating human flesh. I'm afraid I can't protect her. Just like the incident with the son of a participating general this time. I want to be a father who spoils her, but in this dog-day world, I am not allowed to do so. After speaking, Song Hanhai blushed and turned around to leave. The butler saw the situation and quickly followed up, saying urgently, "Master, it's so late. Where else are you going?" Song Hanhai said in a muffled voice, "Practice martial arts. Dream space." I don't know if it's an illusion, but Song Lanyi always feels that her learning efficiency in the dream space is extremely high. She has an excellent memory, and with the blessing of space, these obscure scriptures and pharmacopoeias can often be remembered by browsing them twice. However, the more so, she not only did not become complacent, but also became more cautious and diligent. She, Song Lanyi, relies entirely on hard work in her studies and never cheats. Dream space, activate. Another compartment. The medicine saint sensed the call of space and found a safe place to slowly close his eyes. These days, he has also become accustomed to the life of tutoring the young disciple in his nighttime dreams. To be honest, he may have been a bit reluctant at the beginning, after all, he was forced to be captured as a strong soldier. Therefore, at the beginning of teaching, he was also in a semi-perfunctory state. But as he taught, he found that this little disciple had a high level of intelligence and a good memory. Coupled with his sweet mouth, every time he called someone, he would say, "Teacher," one by one. Over time, there has been an increase in sincerity. Today, he is ready to show his true abilities and take his young disciples to see their medicinal skills carefully. Medicine path. That's not just about pharmaceuticals. A few extra words were added to the previous chapter because I was too hasty and didn't pay attention. Sorry. Not affecting reading. See you tomorrow. End of this chapter.